Well, now I'd like to go to Chris Coarse. Chris, start your My Bill program.
Holy mackerel, I didn't think we were ever going to get to it.
Well, we had a lot to do tonight.
All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us for My Build tonight. We have a list of 8 people now that have signed up to present tonight, and we'll start off with Clark. You there, Clark?
Seems now you're down to 7.
No, I am here, but I wasn't expecting to go so early. Move me down the list.
All right, we'll go to Ron. Are you ready, Ron?
Sure I am. Let me get this pulled up. All right. So story goes as such. I've been trying to do stuff with model railroading for a number of years. I did it as a kid, and then life kicks in, and now I'm close to retirement, and I'm beginning to really get interested in trying to get back into the hobby. I would go to model train shows and all that, and bring the kids along. And and a couple of years ago, well, 20 years ago, actually, took my son along, and we saw this interesting layout, and 2 rather large guys with very, very thick Southern drawl. First one said, you see that fire down there? And then there's a moment, and then the other guy goes, yup. And the kid went nuts. He started laughing like crazy. These guys looked at us, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna get slugged here. But long story short, over the years, son always kept on saying, "Oh, you're gonna go to see that fire down there show?" And I go, yeah, whatever. So over the past year, I kind of figured, you know what, he's getting older. Might as well give him something to kind of make him laugh, because of course, as everything, life kind of kicks in, and there are good days and bad days and all that. Now, occasionally I do smoke cigars, and there are nice boxes that come with them, and you can use them for all kinds of things. And the nice part is that if you get some of the boxes like this, you actually wind up with cedar inserts as well that you could use for different modeling aspects of that. So I was figuring, what can I do to kind of give him, a picture of that, see that fire down there? So I took one of my boxes and started playing around with the thing to see if I can put, essentially the model inside. And in essence, this is how this thing looks. And what I tried to do is, go really old school in the way I was trying to do things in the past. That is, you pick up some garbage from the outside, you kind of dry it, you put it in glycerin, preserve it that way and all that kind of stuff. And you use the scraps that you find. So I picked up some glycerin, had different kits with people, parts and all that. Try to, doll the thing up a little bit and put this thing on some styrofoam, because, we got to do something. And you put it inside the box that was painted, and I try to make it a little bit dark. So it is as if it is a hobo scene, as he saw at that point when the guys were saying, you see that fire down there. In essence, the darn thing does work. We do have the flickering flame and all that. And, at night, if you go to a dark room, it looks pretty decent. Kid loved it. He was so happy with it. I mean, the guy actually had, tears in his eyes. But my daughter was also an instigator in a lot of different things along the years, and saying, you ought to be doing this. You ought to be doing this, Dad. You ought to be doing this. And so I go, yeah, I ought to be doing this. I don't have the time. We're, somebody's got to make the noodles in this, in the family. But she's a vet tech, and she always wants to have a large house when she finally establishes herself and all that kind of stuff, and have a bunch of animals in the backyard. So I figured, you know what, I'll do something for her as well. And, put, another styrofoam board, got a bunch of different animal pieces that I had, from the kits that I had over the years, and put it also in a cigar box. By the way, these cigars, if you ever do smoke, don't get them. They're horrid. The only good thing about them was actually the box. But lo and behold, you put the thing in, the house is scratch. Everything is pretty much scratch built, aside from, well, they're built, from kits, but the house is scratch built. It's basically is cardstock, scribed it, did a bunch of pan pastel on the thing, put a fascia with styrene, put a U styrene for the gutter, put a little this and that and all this kind of stuff. It's not the prettiest thing in the world. On the other hand, it gives her the idea that you can have something for your own self that kind of reminds you of where you really want to go. And there are little scenes, of course, with her dogs and cats and everything else and birds and things that she loves to do. So my goal in this whole thing is this model railroading? No. On the other hand, did I make my kids really happy with the darn thing, over a Christmas, gift? Absolutely. Both of them were really happy. And I think in the end, as time goes on, they have something that, Dad did for them. So that's pretty much it. Thanks, guys.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Ron.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ron?
This thing is so simplistic, it's not even funny.
Ron, somebody just commented to me, I think it was somebody in my club, that they found a place where they throw out cigar boxes. So they went and got like 25 of them or something.
Yeah, that's actually it. I mean, you can smoke, of course, which is not hazardous to your health, quote unquote.
Probably
But on the other
more that way though.
Oh, it does. But for $3 or $4, you can actually go to a smoke shop and get the boxes. So they got to get rid of them one way or another, and make a couple of bucks on the side too.
Well, yeah, but I get them for free. I went to the liquor store that sells cigars, and I said, I want all your scrap. I don't care what it is. I want it all. And I go by once a month and pick up a box of cigar box stuff. And a lot of it that I get are the real thin sheets that go between the layers of cigars.
That's right.
And that's what I make my shingles out of for my roofs. I model scale. The rest of it I cut into strips, and that's what I use for the interior bracing for all my buildings.
Oh, neat. Fantastic.
Those cedar strips also make wonderful HO scale flooring.
Yeah, absolutely. And the nice part about it is they don't have to call the garbage people to get it. All they do is just wait for me. I come by and pick it up.
Quite true. Well, thanks for the tips, and thank you all for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron.
All right. Any more questions? All right. I guess we'll go on to Jeremy if he's ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to put up a slide, some slides in a second here. I've been working on this show for probably a month now or something, and learning a lot. I started in the 60s with some of the earliest N gauge that was sold in this country, and switched to HO in the 70s and did a couple of basswood kits at that point in time. And then got a bunch of old Lionels, pre-war Lionels and stuff like that. And then 40 years went by and I kept going to shows. I lived in the Boston area, so I went to basically and I took my kids along and neighbors' kids to go to as many train clubs and train shows as I possibly could, just to stay in it, but I didn't really do any building or anything like that. Fast forward to more recently, and I moved to Portland, Maine, actually specifically Peaks Island, which is a part of Portland, Maine. It's a 17-minute ferry ride from downtown Portland. And I continued to have an interest in trains, and actually really got interested in two-rail O gauge, as in part because I went to the convention in Worcester, I think in 2010 or something like that, and I got to see a lot of shows, got to see a lot of different layouts and stuff like that. So I'm going to put on this. So what I'm going to show you is kind of like what I've been collecting that's inspiring my layout, and I'll show you a bunch of pictures of Portland, Maine, and the railroads and stuff around the 50s and stuff, diesel steam transition. And I'm going to, so I'll start sharing here in a second. Um,
So, Jeremy, what's that background picture you're using?
well, that's going to be coming up. Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, because I live on the one of the things, if you've been to Portland, the train tracks run right down the middle of the street. I think there was a double track plus a trolley or a streetcar track as well. And some of the pieces of the track are still, every once in a while, I'll take pictures of them repairing the streets and stuff and pulling up rail. And so you can see a couple pictures here, but one of the things I want to do when I build my layout and is try to recreate some of these scenes. So here's some examples of commercial street, rail traffic, and also that ferry on the lower right. That's an example of something, and I've got that picture later on too, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. But let me dive into this as long as I can. Okay. So one of my other motivations for doing this was to get my pictures organized, because I have stuff all over the place. And Bill Neal did a great job the other day with his pictures and stuff. But one of the things I did was just for my own convenience, on the left of these pictures, you're going to see some text that may have come out of the source where this came from. And also I tried to, for my own purposes, kept a link to where this document is. And there's a bunch of pictures from this presentation, which was an incredible presentation about Portland's eastern waterfront. It was done by the Historic Commission, and they were trying to do a planning thing. So if you look at this map here, this is a 1914 Sanford map, or Richards map. It was an insurance map. And this is where Grand Trunk Line came in over here, this freight yard over here on the right. That's where all the traffic came in. The trains left from here going towards the right up to Montreal. And whoever asked about the picture in my background, that's actually a picture looking down these tracks at the station. You can see this station over my other shoulder, this shoulder. There's the station. So that's the Grand Trunk station. And then there's this other building, their Grand Trunk offices. I'll show you some pictures of that. That building exists today, and they've done a beautiful job restoring it. A couple other key points here. There's a couple big grain elevators here that just towered over the city of Portland. All the grain grown in Canada was shipped out of Portland up until 1905. And so it was all of these wharves here were mostly grain shipment. And then you can see all the tracks heading down Commercial Street and stuff. And the ferries came in from where the island that I live on came in on what's called Custom House Wharf. I'm going to keep going here because otherwise this will take forever. This is a picture looking north from the grain elevator. And you can see this is called Munjoy Hill, the factories in the foreground up there. That's the Portland Company. They built those buildings. Some of them are still standing. That's being restored now to commercial development. They built about 158 steam locomotives. Then they went out of business because of competition from other bigger entities in Philly and Lima and stuff like that. They couldn't do it, but they stayed in business for well into I think the 60s, doing castings of all kinds of other stuff, ship stuff, turbines, all that stuff. So anyway, so that's looking north. This is the same picture that's in my background right now. This shows you on the left looking down Commercial Street, that big building that's kind of up there in the upper left. That's right where my ferry terminal is. When I get off the ferry, that's where I get off. And this office building here next to this station, that office building is still there. And that's Grand Trunk, by the way. So the other thing that's interesting that came up in one of the other meetings a few weeks ago was talking about Interchange Railroads. So Grand Trunk basically ended here. The Portland Terminal Railroad connected Grand Trunk down Commercial Street to Boston and Maine Central on the other side of Portland. And so that they would bring freight back and forth down Commercial Street. This is that station again in a postcard. And you can see the two grain elevators on the left and the right. That's the grain elevators there. And you can see the office building over on the far right that's still there. And this is what the interior, another postcard, an interior of that depot. By the way, I'd love to, and here's another picture of that depot from the back. This was a train taken, let me see, 1955. I was a train headed to Montreal. This is from another really great book called The Grand Trunk Railway Photo Album. I have this book and I just copied it out of that. And if you'll notice in this picture, the tower's gone. They had to knock down the tower, the clock tower, by 55 because it was structurally too weak to stand. So here's another picture of Commercial Street. This one's really old. This one is about circa 1890. But you can kind of get a sense of the rails running down these streets. I need to go back downtown with this picture on my iPad or something like that. And because a lot of these buildings are still there. I'm positive of it. This is another one on Commercial Street that I really like. And that, once again, I'm not exactly sure where it is on Commercial, but I know some of these buildings are still there. And Jim, I put this picture in there for you because I need you to build me this car for my railroad. This is and over on the far left here is Customs House. That's the when all the ships came in, sailing ships came in with goods, they had to basically go over there and pay their customs. And that building is still there, and they do historic tours. It's basically, there's a few government offices in it, but it's mostly just a historic site, and they do events and stuff there. It's very cool on the inside. If you ever get a chance to go to Portland and go to Customs House, definitely worth it. And if you look at the far right, way down there at the end, that's One India Street, the offices for the Grand Trunk Railroad. I love this picture. This is a picture that I would, if I could try to recreate this boxcar with this family trying to cross the street. There's about 900 people that live on my island year round. And I've gotten to be friends with a lot of the old timers, and they talk about trying to cross the street when a freight train's coming through town and they got to catch a ferry in 5 minutes, and they miss ferries because of the trains. And I'm sure there was some bad accidents and stuff like that, but it's hard. It's one of the facts of life living on an island. You got to take the ferry, but this made it even more difficult. But anyway, I love this picture, and I'm pretty sure that building is still there too. Another one I need to identify. This set of pictures, based on that last presentation about the bar mills, and in 1924, the city of Portland took pictures of every single building in Portland for tax purposes, and they're all online. So I just went on to their website. You can see the watermark at the top. And I went down Commercial Street and copied pictures. I have dozens more pictures of Commercial Street, some really cool stuff. This one I included because I thought you guys might like this stuff. This is not one of those two big grain elevators, pretty sure, but I thought this was pretty cool scene to recreate. Could do something I'm gonna buy a Bar Mills kit. Could definitely do something like this. I've got many other things where I could do it as well. And here's another one, coal. A lot of the coal came in. The coal came in here, and I don't know much about it, but they made coal gas. And I assume that a lot of the coal got shipped up, down east to power plants and stuff like that. I'm not really sure. I haven't studied that much. So I kind of showed you Commercial Street. That's one thing I want to model. This is a wharf. The ferries that I leave from actually were these boxcars and stuff over here. That's where my ferry terminal is today. This terminal is called the Maine State Pier, which still exists. It was built in 1922. Those pilings are 75 to 90 feet long, going down into the into the bay. And this presentation, it's the same one that I had shown earlier. There's probably 10 pictures of the construction of this pier. So there's one example, and I put this in here because I'm going to try to model pier. Now, of course, I'm in 2-rail scale, so I can't build that pier, and I can't build any grain elevators. I can tell you that, but I can kind of get the idea across. There's another one. It's all poured concrete over all those all of those pilings, and some great buildings in the background. There's another one. And this is, they had finished the pier by this time, and these are some of the freight sheds on the Maine State Pier. They did, up until 2 years ago, they did really, really loud rock and roll concerts on this pier. So when you were leaving on the ferry boat, you were blasted with this music when you'd leave on Friday nights. This is another beautiful picture. This is right at the end of, this is where I get off the ferry and walk onto Commercial Street. That building on the left, that's still there. I don't think I have a picture of that. That's called the Working Men's Club. It's just a beautiful granite and brick building. And 1 India Street, that Grand Trunk offices are down there on the behind the freight train. And so here, this is an example. So this is a Portland Terminal Company switcher that was moving this train presumably over to Maine Central and Rigby Yards in South Portland. I really like this picture because you can see that building with the arched entryway, Casco Bay Lines. That was the ticket office back when the ferries left from Custom House Wharf. So this is something that I may or may not try to model. It's one of those things that you might not be very visible to the viewer. So, but I love this picture anyway. And this, so here I told you before about Custom House. You can see Custom House at the end here. And so here's some of the ferries coming in at Custom House Wharf. And these are all examples. I'm going to buy the Bar Mills kit, and these are, I have any number of options here for building these buildings along the pier. This one's pretty early on. This is 1898. So, and I'm trying to make the 1950s, but a lot of this stuff is probably still there. There's another, it's a postcard, another view of Customs House Wharf. And you can see over across the bay is not the bay, the harbor is that's South Portland. This is this picture is one I love. This is the smallest ferry boat in the Casco Bay Line history, I think. It was called the Admiral. It'll easily fit in my slip. And look at this picture here with the cars and I'm not even sure what that roofing is above, but if I could kind of recreate that scene, I think that would just be great. However, the good news is there's another ferry boat called the Sabino, and it turns out the Deer River Laser actually makes this kit, the Sabino Casco Bay Line. So I'm going to buy that kit and use it instead of the Admiral, because I have enough on my hands without scratch building boats. It would be fun, but I have other things right now. And also look at all those pilings back there. I got to recreate that. So you'll see that in a minute. So how do I weather those pilings? How do I create those? I've already bought 75 feet of 3/8 inch dowel that I gotta deal with. So here's my layout. I hemmed and hawed about building this layout because I have 3/4 of my basement is ledge or bedrock, and it slopes up. So in the way back corner, it's about 4.5, 5 feet maybe tall, and I'm 6'3". So for me to work up there in that back corner, there's nothing up there. There's some storage and stuff. But when I work on this layout, I have to crawl up under it on my back on the rocks. So it's not very pleasant to work on. But on the other hand, this was useless space, and now I've got a big layout here, and I'm having a great time doing it. I started probably mid-September clearing out all the stuff. I built all the shelves in the way back. And then I bought the book on bench work. Actually, I had bought a couple editions of it over the years and finally used it and pretty much followed it. It's a little tricky when I was building over bedrock, but it's pretty much working. So here's that streetcar picture again. Unfortunately, I don't have a streetcar, but you can see that I have a whole bunch of flat cardboard. So I started doing mock-ups to kind of get a sense of space and proportion and will it fit? Because this whole O-scale stuff, I love it, but boy, it's a learning curve in terms of, the kind of curves you can do and how switches, get in your way and all that kind of stuff. But here's an example. And I put over on the left some of my challenges. Each one of these challenges, in my opinion, could be a my build question. Hey, how am I going to build all these buildings? I need to get all this, it's all brick, down on Commercial Street. What am I going to do with the streets? I got to do ballast stone. That's a photograph of the ballast. It's not cobblestone. When ships came from Europe, they took all this stone out of the bottom of the ships and paved the streets of Portland. And then the ships would go back filled with timber and granite and stuff. So I got to do that. And then here's the One India Street that's been restored on the lower left. I don't know if I'm going to try to build that, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll do a paper model, the clever hands stuff. I've looked at that. Sounded like a pretty cool thing, but we'll see. So here's my little pier. It's going to be a coaling pier at the very least. And there's some of my 75 feet of 3/8-inch dowel. I've been testing out how to distress it. And I'm going to, eventually I'm going to have, you can see some pilings underneath here. So it's going to stretch the whole distance. And on both sides at the far end, there's going to be a seawall, just like there is today in Portland. So I, over here on the left, I've got a whole bunch of kind of questions to myself about, these are all the things I got to do. I got a lot of work here. It's going to keep me busy for, I don't know, 15 years, you'd say, maybe, I don't know. And this is a second little slip area where I'll do the same kind of thing. And maybe, there's some mock-ups of some buildings trying to see what'll fit. And that's a picture of the Admiral. And I'm planning to kind of keep these pictures there. So when people come and see the layout, they can kind of see what I'm doing. And it's also a guide for me to keep trying to make sure I'm honest about what I'm doing, or trying at least my best. But I got a long ways to go in the model building stuff since I haven't done any in 40 or 50 years. And so that's basically it, but I knew you guys were probably into some other more modern equipment. So I found some additional pictures, a few other pictures of traffic going down Commercial Street that I thought was pretty cool. And this is more modern. This is like 1980s, but you guys might correct me on that based on the age of the locomotive. There's another one, great picture. And the third one. I don't know what those freight cars are. Is that grain or something? Well, I don't know what would be in that. Maybe, I don't know. You guys would know better than me.
Yeah, those are grain hoppers. Usually comes from Western Canada.
Yep. Anyway, so that's there's a potential there for lots more of my builds. Any questions, or you want to go back to any of the pictures, or have we run out of time?
First of all, thanks, Jeremy. This is awesome. When you said you had so many pictures, I was just blown away. I figured you'd probably want to take and do the whole thing, but well, in pieces, that'll work too. This is awesome.
Yeah, I did a dry run last night with my daughters and their extended family and stuff, and it was about 70 slides. So I was being kind to you guys and cut it back to about 25. And I've got more than that too. So just, these are some of the ones that I thought were neatest, the coolest stuff.
I could watch a whole evening of that, especially those old photos. I'm going to have to go to that Maine Memories site and look at a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a great site.
Jeremy, do you have my email address?
No, I don't. If you want to put it into chat, I can.
TC, can you put to Jeremy, give him my email address, please?
Yes, I can.
And Jeremy, if you will send me an email, I'd like to talk to you.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Been on and off about streetcars. I'd love to do it. I've been to the streetcar museum down in Kennebunkport, wherever. It's
Yeah.
just a Boston place. And they just look great. Unfortunately, because I'm doing O scale, it's hard for me to do both commercial rail and street cars, but I don't mind running them on the same set of tracks.
I understand.
Now, Grand Trunk was originally broad gauge, correct?
I don't know. I thought it was standard gauge, but I really don't know.
It might have been one of the 5-foot plus gauges at one time, which means you, if you're running the original O gauge, you'd be correct for the original railroad.
Yeah, Canada, from what I understanding, was 5'6" originally. And the Grand Trunk, I believe, is a Canadian railroad.
Yeah, but in the US, well, they ran, who knows what there was an interchange or something. They had a big facility up at Island Pond, Vermont, freight yard. I think, no, that was Boston and Maine. It's hard to keep some of this straight because there's been so many changes over the years, but Maine Central and Boston and Maine and Grand Trunk all came into Portland, as well as 2 or 3 other railroads.
I don't know if the Grand Trunk was built 5-foot plus or if it was built standard gauge. That's before my time.
Yeah.
I mean, based on this, it looked like they did a direct interchange with Boston and Maine on down commercial. So
Yeah.
anyway,
That's cool.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so the great god Google says that common during 19th century railway construction in British colonies, Grand Trunk was built to a broad gauge, and then it was then transferred to a standard gauge in between 1872 and 1885.
Oh,
So
Yeah, I remember when they did that.
yeah, I still think
there are days we feel like that.
All right. Are there any more questions? All right. Well, Jeremy, that was great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Now we'll go on to Jack.
Hey,
Ready, Jack?
thank you, Chris.
Sure.
I'm gonna, hopefully you can see this. I'm gonna put this up in my Lazy Susan. But this is a BTS Better Than Scratch kit number 28108 that I just completed. It's called the American Flag Company in HO scale. It looked good enough for me to be a stand-in for Cabot Stains, which was a Massachusetts company that still exists and makes stains. I used to travel by their multi-story frame building in Chelsea, Massachusetts, back in the 60s and 70s. They eventually moved out of Chelsea, but I figured this would be a good one for my layout. And I really had 2 objectives in building this kit. Super detail it to try to get some AP points for my structures AP. And then secondly, of course, as I just noted, I wanted an industry for my B&M theme layout. And I'll point out a few things as I twirl around my Lazy Susan here. First of all, I tried to have every window and door a model unto itself in a sense. So I try to make every window different, even if it's something as simple as having the shades at different heights. But every window that's not blocked has a shade and a pull cord. I use some fans and other type details in some of the windows. You'll notice that in this front view that and I know it's difficult to see because the model is stained a dark color over a gray paint. But I do have a mailbox. Every door has a light of some sort, non-operable. I have some signage. The signage for the billboard and the water tank and the building itself are actual Cabot stain signs that I pulled off the internet. Got a newspaper on the porch. And I'm not going to mention details that came with the kit. I just pointing out added details. You'll notice the electric electric meter, and I have a gas meter at the other end. I used KC Workshop sidewalk. It's a really nice brick detail. And instead of the rolled roofing, I used some shingles for the canopy to dress up the building a little bit over the main entry. I have numbers. A lot of folks forget to use numbers, but I have a building number for the mailman. So those are a few of the details that I just have on the front. I'm going to move over to, in this oddly shaped building, moving over to the wide end of it. I have a woman hanging out the window and creating a little mini scene, and she's yelling at the carpenter below to get out of the way of the freight, the truck loading dock, because there's a delivery on its way. And you can see I've added some downspouts. There's one in each corner. And again, you get a sense of each of the windows is modeled a little bit differently. And each of the loading docks has some extra detail added. I've got quite a bit of detail that I loaded into the backside where I have 2 freight doors. I used a great video from Jason Jensen to replicate his rusting effects on the metal roofing. Is very difficult to see in this video, but trust me when I tell you that I don't have any cigars, but I have both of the workers on the back dock on a smoke break. Each of them has a cigarette. One has a cigarette in his mouth, the other has a cigarette in his hand, and used a tiny bit of cotton to replicate smoke at the end of the cigarette. One of the cigarettes I even had a little dot of red paint at the end of the styrene rod to represent a little bit of a burning ash. So those are some of the details on the backside that are not quite that are not with the kit. I'd like to move to the narrow end of this odd-shaped building. I had a very long ladder in my scrap box. I have no idea where it came from, but I decided to make an extension ladder. So I cut it in 2 to make it look a bit like an extension ladder instead of one long plastic ladder. And something that I thought you might be interested in is I created the rope effect, if you can see it, but there's a rope to extend that ladder. And what I used is very fine thread. And I'll show you the product that I got from my wife. It's Serial Magic fabric stabilizer.
Can't quite see it, Jack.
Can you see
There
it
you
there?
go.
It comes in a spray bottle. Also, you can use it directly out of the refill bottle as well. But I essentially painted a long piece of sewing thread, fine thread, and it just stiffened that piece of thread. And then I bent it up over the top rung or sucked into the top rung, brought it down, a dot of super glue, and I've got a nice rope around to hoist up my extension ladder. So I thought that was a nice detail that you probably don't see very often. Also point out, I tried to have a mini scene as well, because we all look at roofs. Some of the presenters have talked about roofs before. So I've got the pigeon excrement on the water tank and of course on the billboard. And I've got a couple of workers on the roof as well. Now, each of the downspouts that I put on each corner needed some drainage. So I used some scrap sprue material to create a drainage grate on each of the 4 corners of the roof deck. So that roof water's got someplace to go and the downspouts are where it went. So gentlemen, there's some super detailing on my recent structure. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. That's awesome. That's a lot of things to think about, on this. So I hope that's something that will inspire other people to add extra here and there.
Jack, that's beautiful. I mean, I've seen your work before, but I've never seen when you really put your heart into something like this. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you.
There was a question about what your glass is.
Say that again.
What did you use for window glass?
Oh, that's just acetate.
Oh, okay.
But on a couple of the panes, I believe up here, I just took some City Classics warehouse blocking type broken window panes that I had. I cut those out and I used those on a couple of windows, but for the most part, it's all acetate.
All right, thank you.
Jack, how did you make your shades, particularly the pulls?
Oh, that the poles are very thin styrene rod, and I just glued them to the back of manila folders.
Got it.
Usually I paint my shades on my acetate windows. However, if you're into the NMRA and having your structures evaluated, you want to have as much detail, added detail as possible to your kits. Well, I don't get any really extra credit except for maybe painting and lettering for painting on window shades. So I thought I'd build up my piece count by adding shades. There are 39 windows in this structure. So that's a lot of extra parts that I was able to accumulate by doing that.
Yeah. Very nice.
How many hours did it take you to make this?
Oh, I'm gonna guess that I've got probably a full week into it, maybe 40 hours.
Wow.
It's pretty intense there.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Jack. It's a beautiful building.
Yeah,
Thank you. Let's hope I get 88 points out of it.
You'll get 89.
You get 100 from us, Jack.
Sounds good.
All right. Any more questions for Jack? All right. Well, I guess we'll thank Jack, and we will move on to Bob Farquhar. You ready, Bob?
I decided I'm going to build an O-scale toothpick factory from scratch. This is going to be how I'm going to start. So that's what I'm starting with. I figured 45 years from now, probably have enough wood to build a factory. So just thought I'd share that with you.
I thought it was a reference to the Curse of Oak Island. How they call everybody acorns.
Okay, that's it.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I remember you said there was a joke to it. Okay. All right.
Consider planning ahead.
You can get that building quicker if you do it in T scale. What is that, 1 to 450 or something like that?
It'd be something like that.
Alrighty. If there's no more questions for Bob. Thanks, Bob. We needed a good laugh. So let's move on to Darren Lloyd. You ready there, Darren? See if he's up.
Yeah, I'm coming.
All right.
I stepped out of the office for 2 seconds and go figure.
That's why you leave the camera on, because then we'll know that you're not there.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll remember that. Now this, how do I?
Go to slideshow and go to first slide.
Where's slide? Where?
No, go up.
Yeah. Home.
Now go, keep going. One more.
Go to the bottom corner, bottom right corner.
Right corner. Yeah, because I got stuff at the top of my screen I can't see. Hold on.
Yeah, if you go to the projector screen in the lower right, it'll
Here, here.
Right before the slide bar.
right, yeah,
There.
right next to where it says 55% to the
There.
left of it.
Okay, my build is what I have to build. After many designs and layout changes, I finally came up with a design that works. I'm gonna have a town on the one wall of the, on two walls of my basement and the steel mill area. The curve, which you'll see in a second, in the downtown will be lower, and the track will go over a viaduct and a bridge, kind of like what we have in town here where I live. This is my railroad room, or the cupboards below the railroad room. I figured I only need it from about 48 inches up. I'm 6'7", so I didn't need to be on the ground. So I put IKEA, just standard IKEA cupboards around the room for storage. I'd show you the picture above it, but it's covered in railroad stuff that I need to build. This is the whole layout. So I got cupboards all over here, and this is the big steel mill area. This is where my downtown will be lower than the, it'll come down off these two modules. The two modules, because I belong to a Fremo group, these modules will double for Fremo. So it'll be basically a little town with some industrial on either side, and then I'll build a transition module from my home modules so I can plug into the Fremo spec. This will be my steel mill. This main area is 4x6. And then this kind of is the rolling mills, and I'll have a car shop. My high line will be here. My blast furnaces will be here. My coke oven will be here. My byproduct plant will be here. Now, this is about my 10th master plan, and I've done more versions of this than I can remember. Clark and Paul both can, I've been working on this for 10 years. We've been in the house since 2010, and I claimed a quarter of the basement. We live in a small bungalow, so I got about a 12 by 13 room, and I'm going to jam as much stuff into it as I can. There's all the wood for the top of the modules. I made a frame, a jig and a frame for our modules. This is standard Fremo HO scale. Paul Thompson and another friend helped me build this. There's a half frame jig so that if I make it longer, I can use this, or it made sense. And then this is what the frame, the modules will look like. And I will just make this sort of thing in a bigger scale for the 4x6 module. And that's it.
Cool. Looks like you're off to a great start there.
Well, it's only taken me 10 years to get to that point. So, but now that I'm involved with you guys, I'm like, oh, geez, I gotta get going on this. So I can keep doing my build and show you the progress, because I'm like,
that's right. We need more material.
I'm working on it. Next month, maybe not next month, but once it warms up here, we'll be able to get out in the shop and keep working. So that's it for tonight.
All righty. Are there any questions for Darren?
Yeah, Darren, question. What legs are, or what leg connections are you planning to use to the top of the modular?
Well, the modules are just going to sit right on the cupboards. So at
Gotcha.
home, there will be no legs. It'll just sit right on, like I didn't show you because the top of the cabinets are just full of model stuff. Like it's literally 2 feet of stuff from where the picture, and it's I'm like, that's too embarrassing to show. So
Gotcha.
I'm just going to put the modules right on the bench work, right on the cupboards. I've designed them so that they, like, I started out with IKEA cabinets, but I've kind of tweaked them to my own use. So once I clear that up, I'll be able to show that in my next submission. But right now, it's just way too much stuff. You'd never see any of the details. But the top cabinet, I added that on to get me up to my height, and it's basically open. So I have doors, but it's all open behind. So there's no, so I can store long stuff in there, you know, so it just, because I should have went with taller cabinets. I should have bought pantries and cut them in half, but I didn't. I just went standard. So then I ended up with being low. So I bought some more doors because the IKEA white doors, I don't know what they are like in the States, but up here, they're $5 to $10 a piece. So you can't build a door for that. So I just went and bought a bunch of their doors and just kind of tweaked it. And I've used some of their doors out in the shop too. And yeah, so they're great, cheap doors. And I mean, you don't need, you want to basically hide it. You don't want to put a bunch of money into cabinet doors. So.
Well, I have heard that a true model railroader builds his layout on top of all the unbuilt kits that he has.
Oh, no, you put them under it.
Yeah. So there's no more questions. That's it for me, Chris.
All righty. Thanks, Darren. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like you're off to a good start.
Yep. And now we're on to Jim Murphy.
Well, thank you very much. And I am going to make sure I hit share screen here. And there is what I want to share. Okay, I got to share computer sound as well. I then share. Okay, I should be up, and here we are. Ready. There we go. Anyway, I'm Jim Murphy. I'm from Western Massachusetts, and this is my hometown railroad station. Back when I was in the early 60s, we would travel on the B&M to all over the Northeast because we had public transportation, and the rails was our way of going to visit people, and we went in and out of a station that was designed by the architect H.H. Richardson. He was famous for his Romanesque design, which consisted of brownstone and granite and these very unique columns that were modeled after Egyptian Ithacanthus. But this was 1887. And fortunately, that station still stands today. Back a number of years ago, a couple of 8th grade kids that had joined their first model railroad club said to themselves during class, when we weren't supposed to be doing it, we've got to build a model of this station? Well, one of the guys was a bit of an artist, so he got the idea of sketching it up and taking notes and doing our design for us, and took photos with his Kodak Brownie. And the other kid was a slug, and he took all that information and then moved to the South and put it on the shelf for 20 years and saying someday he's going to get around to building the station model. Well, finally we got to planning. And planning any major endeavor is the first thing you do is research your subject, gather up all the information, get photos and sketches of the prototype, which sometimes your friend will do for you, document all the steps, and you look for articles, magazines, drawings, you make notes, postcards, and you find photos, you take your own photos. And sometimes you can find postcards from back in the day, or when you get back home, you take some of your own photographs, and that you pull all that information together. The second phase of planning is to really start digging in. You start asking questions, you look online, you search the internet for photos. My compliments to Gaylord, because you listed some excellent sources of information for finding old stations and old railroad history. You try to find unique features of the prototype, which sometimes will help you, because the historical societies can be infinitely helpful, especially in this case, the Boston and Maine Historical Society. Thank you, Jack Jottle. But even growing up a few blocks from the prototype, you still can't beat what the Historical Society has. This particular station was kind of unique, being, okay, it's the Northeast, but you'll notice that there is a immigrants room. There's a ladies' room, a central waiting room for the general public, and immigrants. So all you Eastern and Western European ethnic types, you Irish, you Scotch, you Poles, you Jews, you Italians, we're all in the immigrants room. We can all relate to that. So in 1887, the Railroad Gazette published a plan of the Connecticut River Railroad Station, which was a pretty good working plan for what the station would look like on the interior, which was a good clue to get started on the project. So years later, this other 8th grade kid was also able to get into the station to start taking some measurements and take some pictures to allow this guy to put together a plan and start, in this case, a scale drawing of exactly what that station was. Now, once you commit to build, you're going to decide how you're going to build it. In this case, the Romanesque required brownstone and granite, which are blocks, and there's no commercially available building material to do this. So you're now committed to scratch building. One of the easiest ways to make blocks, and it ain't that easy, is to make resin castings. You start with a mold, you then apply urethane rubber to the master, and then from the urethane rubber mold, you cast resin panels, then you put all the panels together, and then paint, weather, etc. But you decide early on what level of detail. And if you were going to do this as a once in a lifetime project, yeah, you're going to try to take it to as far in detail as you can. So exactly to scale and based on lots of photographs and other information that you can gather. So you start carving the plaster with dental tools. You poured it in and you set it up in molds around it. You use a detailed drawing and then a photograph to get things exactly right. And you can see with a good sharp photograph how you copy this stonework and this brownstone arch. And yes, the guy who did all the photographing for me counted that there were 23 tapered arch bricks in that arch, and he made sure I had 23 blocks. So you can take it to the ultimate in detail as you're working through this. Later on, there were a few more compromises. Once you've got the master pattern, you make the urethane molds, you start casting, then you get it poured together. You clean the castings up and you join them as sub-assemblies, and then you file, fit, detail, engrave, sand, and fill in all the empties until you get a working wall castings for the exterior walls. You wash and you paint and you prime. You sand the back side so you get the walls as thin as possible and that the window openings are clear and sharp and ready to receive paint. Here I primered so that I could better see the surface, and then used filler putty, Squadron Greenworks, a lot of miracles, and then an engraving tool to finish off the mortar lines and to get the all the detail in it. Once you got the outside walls washed and you're getting ready to primer and paint those, you can start and break off and get into the interior walls made by a different concept. Here we use the old-fashioned sheet styrene. We cut, snap, fit, re-glue, butt joints together. And the key here is to make the styrene sheet with window openings that exactly match the exterior windows. The exterior walls are laid right next to it, and every step of the way, make sure that the interior windows line up absolutely perfectly with the exterior windows. Because what's going to happen is you're going to line the interior walls up with the exterior walls, and then the window glazing, which will be acrylic, will fit in between. So what you're doing is finishing exterior, interior, completely separately, and then you marry them together at the last minute. So as you're progressing, once you've got them painted and sanded and all the things put together, you don't want to have any surprises when you put them together. So interior walls are painted to match the right color for the interior. Then work, and you miter them just as a carpenter does, glue them to the walls, give them a sealing coat of dull coat, and have completely finished interior walls and completely finished exterior walls. You start joining them together. This is the reason why you did so much cutting, fitting, and squaring and truing up. As you start gluing the individual pieces to the bottom, you want to start laying out the walls, and then you're going to build that sandwich, which is put some spacer strips in between the windows, and that will allow you to cut a lot of pieces of acetate. I use 1/10 of an inch, so I put 1/10 of an inch spacers, so that as you build up the wall section, you have an inner wall, you have a gap filled with acetate, making the window glazing, and then the outer wall. This is why it's so important to have all these window openings line up. Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, but you got to take your time with it, and it's worth the effort. And just before you put it all together, check that the whatever you're using for window material, flooring material, will also fit neatly inside the openings. And so, in case we'll see later, we have different types of flooring material that fit between the partitions. So you're going to make sure that that fits before you erect the walls. And it goes without saying, true, square, level, flat, plumb, all the things that old carpenter taught you over the back fence. It's all important. Once you've got the walls up, and again, being careful, because sometimes you won't be using gloves too, because you'll put a lot of fingerprints on that acetate glazing. Because the roof is so difficult, it's a hip roof, but there's 6 gables, and you want it to fit well. So there's a little bit of trial and error. I made a mock-up out of foam core, and then took full-size HO scale drawings that I'd made from my original plan and cut and pasted them to the outside of the foam core. So I've got mock-up walls here, but because all these little sections, they're all mounted loose, now you start fitting up the roof. Original roof is just cardstock, and you go back and forth with that, and trial and error, and trial and error, and trial and error. Once you have a very satisfactory roof, then you start cutting the roof overhang extensions the same way. And then a little bit of tape here holds those in place. So you're doing a lot of cutting and fitting. When you're satisfied that the roof is just as good as it can get, then you take the roof apart and you put each pattern over a piece of, this is gator foam, which is a stiffer foam core. It's got very hard waterproof paper on both sides. It stays very rigid, and it takes paint and stain and everything else that you're going to throw at it very well. Also, a note in passing here, I have put scribed lines on every piece of foam core because my shingles will be glued directly to this. It will be impossible for the human eye to put shingles on this roof and keep them straight unless you have some penciled in guidelines. So get out there with the drafting tool and draw parallel lines before you put your shingles on. You'll be glad you did later. Here's another shot of finishing the outside and the roof. Once it's all glued together, you want to fill in any gaps. And again, here's where the horizontal lines to guide your shingles come in handy. These were like 9 packets of shingles. Thank you, Steve Milley. I kept Rusty Stumps in business. They're actually S-scale shingles because that's what's scaled out to the slate roofing that was used on this HO scale building. The individual end pieces on the gables are actually freestanding. It looks as though they come up from the bottom wall, but because the roof has to be completely removable, these resin castings, again, painted, finished, weathered, and ready. And that's the final assembly for those. Those go into the gables, as does the overhead and the central gable. And the roof edge is held up by some resin castings. Mr. Richardson loved this Egyptian format style. I don't know what an architect calls those, but those were his trademark support posts around the edge of the column. And again, be very careful about edge shingles, as somebody else mentioned earlier. You get a little drooping in there, and this has been handled a lot. So it's already started to droop on me, and I got to go back and poke those up again. You do a whole bunch of these. Again, that's make your own mold, make out of urethane, resin cast all of these, because you're going to need a bunch whenever you have multiples in there, and even some loose pieces so that you can make a corner post out of that to complete your detail. So then you get the roof on and then start adding various and sundry details, like all of the figures. You label the doors. We go back to the original drawing from 1887, and each door, you'll notice, has been labeled for its purposes: telegraph, ladies waiting area, general waiting area, and the ticket booth in there, and all the accoutrements that you add: baggage cart, steps, and figures, lots of luggage, and as people traveling back and forth. I staged the model in the 1950s, which is when I remember it best as a little kid. After you get the outside going, then it's time to work on the inside. Here's where many prototype photographs, if you can get them, are really worth their weight in gold. The interior trusses, fortunately, were still standing in the building, and these were tapered columns. So I had plenty of work right down to the, if you look hard, the nut bolt castings on the end of those, because you can't put a truss in tension, because wood doesn't like tension very well. But if you put a bolt drilled all the way through it, it's really happy. Models for the doors and for the color of the doors, even after all these years. The color of the paint on the interior is, again, this section was opened up after 50 or 60 years of being sealed over. And what they found inside was the true color that the station was painted originally. It was called Sunset Gold by Mr. Richardson. So he had his own ideas about what he was going to do. This pattern came from a flooring pattern, came from another one of his drawings for a similar station. And these are 2 by 4 foot marble tiles. On the side, Mr. Richardson also had a granite quarry, a brownstone quarry, and a marble quarry up in Vermont and New Hampshire. So he was not only designing the buildings, he was also supplying the building materials, kind of vertical integration, and he had the construction crew. Flooring is sometimes individual strip wood. It's just painted wood flooring, and this is in the immigrants' room, which is a lot less luxurious than the general waiting room with the ticket booth. In here, you've got a couple of stand-up toilet facilities off of the immigrants' room. On general waiting, you actually have real toilets. So you can take your modeling to the next level and really get it down to the sense. The baggage room has the usual baggage, plus it has a safe and other things that. Hard benches for the immigrants and some soft padded chairs for the ladies over in the ladies' waiting room. So keep the details going and make your roofs immovable. What's hard to see here is a very small LED. Jeff Bunza talked about making LED lampshades. These are 0402 lights. They run along the top of the rafter, running lengthwise here. And just before we assembled the walls, we remembered to run some number 36 magnet wire up through the walls, just like you would run house wiring through your walls. And then I can tap into that so I can run a series of half a dozen green lampshades with the LEDs in them to light up the interior. Jeremy, I hope you're inspired now to build Portland's Grand Trunk Station, because this is what is it. That interior was much more luxurious than this, and I'd love to see a model of that. So go for it, buddy. And finally, what makes the model successful is attention to detail. We have a door photographed from the original prototype. Then you start labeling them, the baggage, the immigrant entrance, which was separate than the general population. Redoing the truss work to try to get that as close as possible. And the little niceties inside the ladies' room, radiators and all the moldings that were appropriate there, and truss details. So once you get all the details worked out, you're ready for service. And again, conformance to the prototype, all the photos that we were able to take, you complete interior detailing so you can look in through the ticket window, ready to buy that big trip to New York City, probably twice a year for, quote, we're going shopping. That meant a long weekend in New York City, traveling by train, and just making a whole weekend of it. The little telegraph station where you'd send your Western Union telegrams. And what makes a model successful is when you not only are able to have people recognize it, but have the curator of the local museum start chasing you down. So when are you going to put this on exhibit up there? And that's endorsement enough. Any questions?
Yeah, Jim, question from YouTube from Human City Junction. How long did it take you to build this model?
Let's see. I started in 1964. I put it on a shelf. I did some drawings. I made some castings that the preliminary castings went to a NMRA show in the 90s. And then about 3 years ago, I was coming up on my 50th high school reunion, and my buddy said, "Hey, Murph, remember all those drawings and photos I sent you of the station? You're going to bring that model up to the reunion, aren't you?" Okay, I'm busted. I had 9 months from the time he told me that I wasn't going to get through the buffet line unless I had the model with me to put it together. So fortunately, I was almost retired at that point, and it was like 9 months of I don't know how many late nights putting it together, getting it ready to carry up to that reunion and put it on the shelf. He also put a tip jar next to it so that my classmates could contribute, throw a few bucks in the jar to contribute to the restoration of the original station, which fortunately is still standing. And they're going to try to hope to turn it into a community center.
Beautiful model.
Jim,
Sure.
I didn't hear you mention the brick flooring on the outside of the building.
Oh, goodness.
The herringbone flooring.
Yeah. I'm going to do this just briefly. And I think one of the unique features of the model itself, and I don't know if I can show you the all around the outside of the building on the ground was herringbone brick. And earlier on, I saw, was it up in Portland, Maine, where they used ballast stones?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, that was Portland, Jim.
I was in Portland,
yeah,
where they were paving. Let's see. I'm wondering if this will show it enough. Okay, that's the decking around the outside. Just let me look for one more photo, and I think I can find. All right, just gonna move this. Close that, and I've got it right here. The look at that. Models. All right. And look down on top of it, right? So my friend Dan Fisher, a man even more intense than I am, wanted herringbone brick in HO scale. So he took a piece of styrene and carved, I think this is, might show it here. Yep, almost got it. Carved herringbone brick in HO scale because he is a structural engineer and an architect. Here we are.
So
And
Jim, stop. You're sharing your PowerPoint application to us.
Yes.
So we're not seeing anything else you're doing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me show
wait,
you.
just a second. Just stop sharing. Click on stop share up at the top.
Okay. You
stop
want
sharing.
Stop share.
All right.
And then
okay. Now share. Click on share again.
All right. Share screen.
Now, tip for everybody: the upper left window. When you click on Zoom, the upper left window is your desktop. That's where you'll see the picture of you, etc., or probably me because I'm talking.
Yes.
Click on that, and we'll see what you see. Don't show us any porn.
Oh well,
we'll see
I'll
what
try
you
not
see.
to. You know,
that way, as you go through and show things, we'll see what you're showing us. Go for it.
Okay, now I hit share. And now, are you seeing?
We're seeing a building interior.
With a building interior, and over on the side there next to the baggage carts, are you seeing herringbone brick?
Yep. Yes.
That is HO scale. Now I needed 4 feet of brick to go all the way around 3 sides of the station. Okay, at the time there was no true scale HO size brick, and Dan could tell me exactly what the measurements are. He took a scriber and he made a approximately 2-inch by 2-inch master pattern for me. I made a couple of urethane molds, and Bill and a couple of other people helped me just cast and cast and cast. So I was making 2-inch by 2-inch squares of herringbone brick, and then filing carefully, I was able to put them together, one on end and end and end and end. And I went 3 sides around the station, which is approximately 24 inches or so on one side, then 8 inches or 9 inches on the end. So I needed length of herringbone brick. So by having a friend who was able to carve this brick for me, make a master, and then resin casting, and then lots of painting, and even painting individual bricks so that they would show up as those. The beauty of resin casting, once you get the molds made, you get a master. Your molds will last for 15, 20 times of casting. And if you wear the mold out, you make another one. So that's a good way to get a lot of multiple stuff in here. And then everything else is put all together, as I said.
One thing Jim didn't say is that Dan Fisher even did the end of the bricks. So when you laid the castings together, they integrated with each other.
Yeah, and he was accurate enough with his scriber that when you put it, it was very, very difficult. You might get a little bit of striation on that, but we're talking HO scale here.
Yep.
And all you took was a little pastel powder, and the joints just came out magically. It was a beauty to see. So
Yeah, I was with Jim for a lot of this project. He's kind of my modeling partner. And it was an impressive project to watch him put this thing together.
and some occasional frustrating moments, but
Nah.
and then it's like, yeah, just carry it off to a model contest, and it's been that was a help towards my AP for structures. Anyway, so it was well worth the I don't know, 9 months straight of god awful late nights to put it together.
Wow, that's to say it's fantastic is an understatement. Holy mackerel, that's unbelievable. Are there any questions? Going once, twice. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jim. That's very much appreciate you sharing that. That's some incredible detail work you've got there.
A lot of fun.
All right. Next up, we have Bill Davis.
That's a heck of a follow. If I could act the follow, I'll tell you.
I know.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let me start off with the share screen up, I guess. Desktop. Is that what I want? Yeah. Share. There you go. Okay. Well, this is just a picture I pulled off the Louisiana Historical Railroads Facebook page. It's part of the Green Brothers quarry company. I love quarry railroads, so that's the thing. So I'm going to share a couple models that I've recently finished. And before I bring anything up here, one of them is a Tom York conversion kit that was designed to make a die-cast pickup truck into a moving van. And so I found an international, about a 1940s international truck body. So I used that for the cab part of it, and then the rest of it's Tom's kit. But Tom did a model of it, and he put a extra load in the back of the truck. So I carved off the lift gate in the back and put it down and added an extra load to mine as well. I also bit it so that it looked like it was so overloaded that the back springs were really well compressed. And the story I did for this model was that it broke down because the international truck.
I just wanted to correct you. We're looking at engine number 72.
Yeah, I know. I know. I haven't got to the pictures yet. And so the truck had a really nice engine inside that, so I muddled the hood open, and the interior was pretty nice. So I muddled the door open, and the story kind of like the truck is broken down, and the guys are going to get help. So that's the deal. So let me correct this. So this is the truck. That's the international front end there. And Jay Carter was my boss in California, was also my buddy who I went to all the concerts with and stuff like this. So I named it in honor of him. Although he lives in California, it's nowhere near the Southeast. But this is all resin casting back here. And the front part here is the die cast truck part of it. So this is the extra load in the back. That's a piece of foam that I carved and then painted it white. And then Jack Juddle's always talked about doing tea bag stuff. And so I've been playing around with tea bags. And so I took a tea bag and took it all apart and wrapped it up as a canvas covering for this extra load, and then stole some of my wife's thread and tied it to the back of the truck. And so that's the look there of having this truck is so loaded that they had to put part of it in the back and tie it as a bundle. And when Tom designed the kit, this tailgate part here was actually closed, but I carved that all off the kit, added new hinges and things, and then made a new tailgate in the back here. This is just the other side of the truck. It had a side door. I replaced the cast on hinges with the side door. Had a heck of a time trying to paint the yellow reflectors, only to find out they didn't have reflectors in those days. But anyway, and then Dylan had this kit, as you know, of the Junkyard Dog. I built one of the kits, and then I decided I wanted to build a standard gauge version. So I bought a second kit from Dylan. And I had enough parts left over, so I built this freelance little critter here. And the idea of the paint scheme on the thing is that it is an old engine that my Cornerstone Rock company bought, and they dragged it back to their property and simply slapped their name on the side of it and put it to work. And so it's desperately need to get the back shop into a paint shop to be repainted. I did most of this, the weathering here with using salt and using hairspray, and built the layers of paint up that way, and then using an eraser to remove the paint from it. And that's how you get the multicolors showing through, some of primer showing through, some of rust showing through. On the frame part down in here, I actually did it with chalks, and then using water, streak the chalk so it looks like the things are running down off of it. This is the back. I intentionally made the windows very dirty because every quarry locum I've ever seen has very, very dirty windows in them. And you'll also notice I did the streaking back here. A couple of pocket was scratch built, as was the lights. There's a certain friend of mine who's going to put some LED lights in this thing so the lights light up and things soon. Soon as I find another trolley mechanism to power it, since Bachmann no longer sells those. And final picture shows the other side of the thing. It's a freelance engine, but it's got a lot of Alco features in it. That's why all the soot and stuff like this off the smoke. If you ever seen an Alco diesel run, Becker Sand and Gravel loved Alco diesels, and every video I've seen of Becker Sand and Gravel, there's just black smoke just pouring out of these locomotives. And so that's the last picture here. Once again, I have more of that streaking the chalk effect to get the runoff look and things. So that's pretty much it, guys. It was just a quick show and tell. Any questions?
What do you mean just? That stuff's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Bill? All right.
Did you?
I guess I could do that. The thing is designed to be use a Bachmann trolley mechanism. I know I can buy one off of eBay, but I hate to buy a whole trolley for just wanting the mechanisms. And of course, there's been 50,000 ON30 and ON3 models built using that trolley mechanism as critters. And Bachmann, if they're smart, will get that thing back in their line again, because I'm sure there's tons of people who are looking for those trolley mechanisms right now.
Yeah, but you built this as standard gauge?
No, this is narrow gauge.
Narrow gauge, okay.
I have another one in process here that is the standard gauge version, but I had enough parts left over, like I said, from the second kit that I bought from Dylan to build this critter. Like the hood is freelance, but it's cut kind of a lot of a Davenport look to it. So I don't know where.
A lot like
I guess
would come.
It's maybe. Like I said, I didn't really try to go for anybody's real look. I just kind of created it.
It's what you call mechanics grab whatever parts you can get and make something run.
That's it. Yep.
Yep.
One other thing I'll say about it here is you'll notice that down under the doors, there's a lot of seepage from oil and grease. I use the MIG weathering paints for that. A lot of the stuff I use is actually from military modelers and other kind of hobby modelers than railroad stuff. Matter of fact, there is no railroad colors in this entire model.
Now, do you add sound to your equipment or no?
I'm not a big fan of sound. It usually annoys me, but you never know. That same guy that's going to do the lights might slap a sound unit in this thing. I don't know. I'll have to see what he's got planned.
That's what the F8 key is for, to mute the thing.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not much on running trains. I'm more in building them than running them. So, but most everything I have is just straight DC at this point. I'm a big fan of battery. I just haven't made the jump into doing it. But I got a lot of my friends have switched to battery, and they're very happy with that move. So I'm kind of thinking that direction. The problem is I like little critters. And I don't like the concept of having follow-on cars, so that's kind of delayed me from doing that kind of stuff.
I have to introduce you to a friend of mine. He has battery-powered things of this size without a follow-along car.
Yeah, I have a friend in California when I used to live in California, and this is back in 2011, and he does ON30, and he's actually got battery powered engines like the Bachmann Climax and the Bachmann Shea, and it's all in the tenders. So I know it can be done.
So is that the HO Bernie mechanism you need?
No, I need the ON30 one.
ON30 trolley mechanism.
Yeah, ON30 trolley, because those are both available on Bachmann's parts site, by the way.
Well, but the problem is I know that, but the problem is the ON30 one has been sold out. So you can only buy part of it, and you can get the wheels, you can get the frame block, but you can't get the motor and stuff. And so that's the problem. Like I said, there's been so many of the critters built based around that mechanism. Tom York is a huge fan of using that mechanism to build critters, and he's built umpteen of them.
Yeah, $45 for a Stanton drive, you'd be off and running.
Well, I might have to think about that. It might be a good idea.
I wonder, does anybody have a good contact for Tom York? I think he'd be great to have on the show.
Yep,
Dylan did.
I can do it.
Okay.
Yep, I know Tom's info.
All right.
I can get that to you, Jim. I know that's not Jim talking, but I can get that to you, Jim.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I've come across his kits from time to time and just been fascinated by what he's done, and I think it'd be great to have him on here.
Well,
Yeah,
you guys may remember that when I did my talk back in September, that one of the biggest influences to my modeling was when I met Tom York in '75 and at the Whistle Stop in Pasadena.
Yeah.
He radically changed my whole concept of modeling, weathering, painting, everything. The man is just a phenomenal artist. He's a phenomenal creative guy. I would go to his house and spend a couple hours out at his house, 3 hours out of his house. I'd leave his house, my head would be just spinning from the ideas that just rolled off the top of his head. Unbelievable talented guy and stuff. Yeah, I will give you the information, Jim, because he would be a good guest.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, guys?
Well, Bill, I think you did a damn fine job backing up Jim.
Yeah. I feel a little bit like the Grateful Dead. There's a great story about the Grateful Dead, is that they played Monterey Pop Festival. The only problem was the Who played before them and Hendrix played after them. So it's quite a sandwich spot to be in. So That's kind of like following Jim. But anyway.
All right.
Finish, unshare your screen now. There we go.
All righty. So we'll go back to Clark. Clark, are you ready? Or did he fall asleep on us?
No, well, Jesus, I didn't know I had to be born in 1817 to learn anything. And I also didn't know I had to wait 50 years to do any kind of modeling. You just start and then it's 50. For all you new guys to the hobby, that's not how it is. Trust me. So I'm going to show something really quick because, you know, you guys always complain I talk along. Holy crap. So this is Bob. I went to Bob Farquhar's dairy company. Bob, I didn't know you owned the Farquhars.
Oh, I know. It's great.
Yeah. And this is usually a thing of milk. And I cut them up into pieces. Now, this is a method that a friend of mine, I can actually say a friend, Alan McClellan, when we did Modeling with the Masters, he did this as a little short clinic, and it's always stuck with me. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna take these waxed inside cardboard pieces out of the milk carton. You're gonna cut it up into strips or whatever you're doing. I'm building a cement loading dock. So I got my cardboard strips and I just use tape, and then I put the tape piece on and I just tape it down with regular cellophane magic tape or whatever. Once I got it nice and square, you do have to check this with a square, you fill it full of hydrocal. Now, one of the real tricks with this, and this is something that Alan taught me, Alan McClellan was in the cement business. And he showed our clinic actually, how to get fantastic looking crackle that comes out in, there's an actual term for it and I've forgotten it. It's been so long since I've been waiting to do this. What you do basically is put just play sand in some of the corners, a little bit of the mold, and just take your finger, wet it a little bit and pour the sand in, and then gently pour in your hydrocal. And then after, when it's all dry, you pop it out. So here's my hunk of hydrocal. It's nice and hard, and you can see here the spackling, or where some of the sand is. Now, when you rub that off, that sand will actually fall out, and it is to represent the thaw and cracking of cement when ice and water get in there in the northern parts of the world, where we have ice and snow. And so this is the start of it, and then I'll sand it up a little bit, and since it's my build, I will give a report as it goes along. But that's just a quick little thing. You don't have to be born in 1948. You don't have to wait 60 years to do it. You can do this whole thing in about 3 hours. All right, that's it. Thanks for coming out. We love what you do, whatever it is you do.
You know, Farquhar's Dairy there is, I think, Little Current. Is that Little Current?
Espanola, actually.
What's Espanola? Okay.
I was down there one time. And the lady, Mrs. Farquhar, actually lived across the street from me.
So I bought a bunch of the coffee creamers with Farquhar's Dairy, and I give them to the friends when they're visiting in the house and say, where'd you get those? Had them made.
Well, if you need more, let me know. I'll send you some.
So Clark, one thing I've done when I've done doing concrete foundations like that is laid up styrene strips. So as like they're forming boards.
Right.
And then when it cast it, you get that forming board effect.
Yes, and you can do the same thing actually with the wax paper and the.
Yes, yeah, you could, yeah.
And, you know, if you want to get an indentation, one of the things that Alan did, he showed us how to build tunnel portals with this method. And he actually just would glue on, you know, if you wanted it to be indented, you glue on more layers of the cardboard, and we just used a little bit of glue and slapped them on, and boy, they came out really well.
Yep.
The nice thing about this, I do the plastic as well for something that I need it to be more, I'll say, rigid in dimensions. But for this piece, as long as it's roughly square and that, and for a cement loading dock, it works really well. And so it's quick and dirty and cheap, and boy.
Well, I think a nice thing about what
guys are cheap.
One nice thing about what you've done there, that wax probably works real well for peeling off, because one of the issues you don't run into with the styrene or even the wood strips is that you sometimes have trouble getting them peeled off there unless you've done some kind of sealant.
Yeah, no,
That wax acts as a sealant. That's a good idea. I never thought about using the milk carton material for that. That's a really good idea.
Just pops right off.
Yep, that's a great idea.
So could I use that to make a stone foundation and carve stone in it, for example?
Absolutely, sure.
Sure, yep.
I was thinking about because I'm doing the O-scale Gray Street house, and I was thinking I want to do a foundation, and that seems like a pretty simple way to do it.
It is, and just make sure that you pop it out fairly early so that you can, if you want to start right away and do the engraving for the bricks. I find the hydrocal, even if you wet it and you go back at it, it's pretty tough material.
Once it dries, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw something that they said to drip water in it while you're carving it or something like that.
Well, yeah, guys will even soak it, but it does become it's rock, man. It's really rock.
You'd be better using dental plaster.
Yeah, dental plaster or
plaster of Paris.
Plaster. Well, I'm not a big fan of plaster of Paris, but even that Durarock 90, I think it is.
Gypsum.
Yeah, drywall mud.
Yeah, will work.
Yeah, it works.
It's not quite as hard as, hydrocal is like my head.
So
hey, don't laugh so fast, you guys.
Everybody take notice that he admitted that.
The reason we're laughing is we're agreeing that we have the same problem.
All right, guys, hold it. Chris, have you got anybody else on your list?
This is the last one.
Okay. Well, Chris, you did a great job tonight. I commend you, and guys that presented tonight, you did fantastic. Thank you all so very much.